So welcome everybody to our annual celebration of Collab Writers and our wonderful creativity in community. So to kick us off tonight, I wanted to just highlight one of the key collaborations that we've had in Collab Writers this year, which was the brainchild of a number of people that you can see on the screen, most notably Swati Chu and Barbara Gorner. So this collaboration was a short docu, and it was called The Dark Horse of Suffragettes, eventually was the name that was landed. To kick us off, let's start with you, Swati, just to talk us through how it came about and where it all began.
Thanks, Jennie, for starting off with our collaboration. It was, it was just completely serendipitous. In fact, I would have loved if Nina was there as well, because she was the one. Actually, she's trying to join. She's just messaging me. She's facing some issues with the link. She's trying to join. That's fine. Whenever she joins, she can talk about it. So actually, it started off with Nina approaching me and saying that why don't we create something for International Women's Day. So this happened in February this year, and or late Jan, I think. And the International Women's Day was on 8th of March. And so we were just brainstorming what should we do. And, then she came up with this idea that why don't we do something related to lockdown stories where, people had to break lockdown rules to do something for a good cause. So breaking the rules, but for a good cause. So yeah, it seemed like a good idea. And in fact, we sent out feelers and we invited people to share their stories with us, interesting lockdown stories. So we did get around 5 to 6 stories. So we posted a lot of, posts on social media that we are looking for lockdown stories. And then one fine day, we got a story from Barbara. Barbara reached out to Nina, I think, through Women's in Films and Television, which she's part of. Both of them are, she's a member, and Nina works for WFT. And, Barbara told us this interesting story, and we just kept all the stories aside, and we just, focused on this one story. And I was like, we have to do this. The story itself was so powerful, and, thought, this is something which needs to be told to the world. And, it would be great if I let Barbara tell the story, how, how did she share this, and how did she think of, getting to this documentary. And meanwhile, I'll check with Nina if she's able to join. So Barbara.
I just forwarded her the link, so hopefully she'll join in a sec. Can't hear you, Barbara.
Barbara, you're on mute.
Basically, I saw the Women in Film and TV request for stories. That's why. And I thought, well, I'll put this in because it's important to me politically, because I've always made films with a women's angle and a political edge. And that's important to me. And I thought this would be a great way of getting the story about Dorset Hall out. And then Nina came back to me and said, well, we're not doing your story as part of a 2-minute, but I've reached out to Swati, and I think we should all work on something much bigger and get the story out there. Because to me, Dorset Hall is important, not just because the building was falling down, but because it's the home of a leading suffragette who was never really recognised, as a lot of these women weren't. So it was a story of setting out to save not just a grade 2 listed building, which had been allowed to fall into dereliction. It was raining through the roof and so on, but also, if you like, to get this woman Rose Lamartine Yates' name on the map. And from there it grew like topsy, because I was throwing other ideas about, because I actually owned the sash that Emily Wilding Davison, that you and Nina came to see in Parliament in Westminster. And I said, we can develop this story. And that's what we did as we went along. We developed the story and made it a little bit bigger than Dorset Hall. And where we are now with it, obviously, I'm amazed it's got these awards for a short film. But the other thing I just want to fill everybody in, is, I was telling Jennifer earlier, is that I've been asking questions to a member of the House of Lords, Tim Clement Jones, to Department of Culture, Media, and helping them find their way to recognising the need and the importance of saving buildings that were important to the women's movement. And we've got some push on that. And I've basically been drafting the questions, because that's what I used to do some of the time in Westminster, to draft pieces and write speeches, that type of thing. So I'm used to the drafting. So I helped him out, and he's sponsored, and we're getting quite a lot of traction behind this now. And we've also, today we've got somebody else on board who, I think he's an architect, and we've just reached out to him. So, from what we've done has actually grown legs. And I think that's quite interesting. From a tiny little idea in women in film and TV, not only has it gone international, but I think we're going to make the government take some notice. Well, we are making the government take notice, which is quite good.
That's absolutely brilliant. And yeah, it's really nice when you can actually see that it's making a tangible difference, and you're actually pushing something along that is a very important cause. So Swati, can you talk us through how you approached applying for various awards and festivals? Because as Barbara says, it's had a lot of selections, and it's also won multiple awards so far. So congratulations to all, but are there any sort of special secrets or top tips that you've got on submitting to festivals?
We don't have any secrets as such. I feel it's a very intuitive process for me now. Probably now it has become, with having worked, reached out to so many festivals, but keeping the spirit of the documentary. We deliberately chose those festivals, first of all, which focused on documentaries, and second, powerful women's stories. This is something which was those were the key things to keep in mind. And some of the festivals I had already sent a couple of my films earlier, and I knew about the festival, that what kind of films do they select, and what would we have a chance over there. So it was a little bit of strategizing there, but rest, and I think it is something we didn't focus on UK alone. We wanted this to be to reach as many countries as possible. So deliberately we sent to different countries. So it was both Nina and me. We were we were constantly pushing off ideas. Okay, let's send to this festival. We had a shared Google sheet on the Google Drive, and all three of us had the links, and we used to keep saying send here. So we maintained a proper spreadsheet. This is the deadline, this is the date, this is the screening date if selected. So all of this was done, and a lot of it was on this deadline is approaching, that deadline is approaching. Yeah,
but it's impressive because it's been across quite a few continents, hasn't it?
6 countries.
Yeah. No, it's really impressive.
And some of them are really prestigious. You know, the one in India, it is the topmost Dada Saheb Phalke Award.
Wow.
It is you know, the festival is yet to happen. It will happen in Feb, but that selection itself is very prestigious. And apart from that, you know, we just won across the world. We won at New Jersey Film Awards, and you know, then there was one award at Fortune, and the recent one. Then we got an award from Romania for Special Jury Award. And yeah, so it's all around.
It's brilliant. So what's next? Do we think with the Dark Horse of Suffragettes?
And next, I think, you know, even Barbara was trying to get it streamed on a TV channel. So I think we approached that. And when I'm trying to reach a couple of distributors, and let's see if we can get it streamed somewhere.
What would be good is to make a bigger movie out of it, if maybe, you know, a bigger producer could pick it up. You see, Rose herself was quite interesting. It doesn't come out in the short documentary, but I've obviously did a lot of research on her, and I think she was bipolar, because she kept, and I think with the focus these days on mental health, it would make an interesting documentary. She was married at 23 to a friend of her father's, who was already in his early 60s, a huge age gap.
Yeah.
And kind of weird when he was already a friend of her father's and widowed and had known her since she was a baby.
Yeah.
And during her life, it was documented that she kept, you know, in those days, they would say bad with your nerves. So she kept having breakdowns and being sent off to Cornwall and France and other places to recover. And I thought her life story itself, managing to achieve so much with having mental health issues, would be a really good movie. I mean, I haven't done any writing, but I think it would have legs in development to actually have a look at that. Also, she was a good friend of Emily Wilding Davison, which most people don't know. She was at university with her. And she probably gave her the sash that Nina and Swati have seen, and you've seen in Westminster. It was likely picked up from Dorset Hall. So I think it's a really important short film because of the elements that have been brought out.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think we've just touched the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more to this story.
I think so.
Yeah, definitely. And
I think the most heartwarming thing of this story was, you know, we got a lot of collab writers in there. You know, we got Paul, who's a collab writer. We got Jennie doing the job she does over here in the documentary, you know, interviewing, which she does brilliantly.
It was a lot of fun. It really was. And you know, apart from Paul, I think we were mostly female. No offense to the males in the room, but you know, it's quite rare for something to be completely female. So I think we did pretty well there. So congratulations to everybody involved. Does anybody have any questions at all for Swati or Barbara about the Dark Horse of Suffragettes, or how they went about a collaboration? If you're interested in a collaboration and you haven't done one before, then feel free to ask some questions. Not to put anybody on the spot at all.
Don't know who's online.
I was wondering, how do you allocate who does what in terms of jobs? Because I just think that'll be an interesting one for me. Do you say that you're doing this, or is there any bleeding into who's producing, who's writing, and who's directing?
The idea of co-directing was there from the beginning. That was the first thing we started off, because Nina is a director, I'm a director. And Nina had made a couple of short films before. I've made around 15 short films. So, we both were co-directing. That's what we began with. And for me, it was my first project co-directing. I've never co-directed. I've always been a sole director, individually directing on all my projects. So that was something new for me. So then apart from that, then we thought, if we wanted to keep it very low budget. And in fact, that is how we did it also, because, we didn't want to have too many dependencies. So Nina and me were co-producers to begin with. And then we talked to Barbara, and Barbara also wanted to be a co-producer, and she did a lot of help with the research, getting the shoot done in Westminster, getting the rest of the shoot done in her house. So yeah, all three of us were co-producers. We kept it very indie, rain dance way, as I would say it, completely indie, low budget, trying to get all the resources within, not paying wonderful people like Jennie, who are just coming and helping us out. So yeah, that is how, and it was a very lean crew, 5-6 people. So we were doing multiple jobs together. So yeah, that's it. And we got the in fact, even the cinematographer Paul, he was doing both sound and cinematography. So, and he got an assistant with him. So that's how you do indie films. You keep the budget low, though the quality, you don't get that highest quality in terms of, if you have a big crew and a big production house and financing backing you. But then we just wanted to make it, and that was important. We didn't want to keep it on the hold. Just go ahead with whatever resources we have. And yeah, I think it turned out good.
I think we were led by the story, I would say, because you see, what I was saying about Rose a few minutes ago is we didn't know, and I didn't know, the connection with Emily Wilding Davison, who is really the iconic figure of the women's movement, certainly in the UK. And sort of Rose kind of led us along, and we were picking up other things and talking about them and discovering other things as we were working together. And I think that's why it worked very well, because we found new elements as we were working, and then we just decided whether to use them or not. So we were quite flexible. It wasn't really rigid, was it? At all. None of it was scripted.
No,
it was, yeah. So basically, I think in an indie film, flexibility is key. So if some new information comes along, because I haven't made a small indie film since 2003, which is a long time, because I've actually made, I've produced sort of 1.5 hour feature films, co-produced 2 and Channel 4 with Claire Balding before, an hour-long documentary. So this was a kind of interesting experience before, for me anyway. So it was an interesting way of coming back to independent filmmaking, which and was also fun because of the flexibility and the cooperation. I think that was good, and I enjoyed working with you, Jennie. It was fun.
It was a lot of fun. It definitely was a lot of fun. And I think that's it's a great question, by the way, Morgan. Thanks for asking it. It goes to show, how, I guess, what comes of a collaboration as well. You create friendships, you create, relationships with people that otherwise just wouldn't be there. I'm also wondering, Swati, did you put any requests at all on social media, or did you do it all through connections through Rain Dance and Collab Writers?
We did all through connections.
All through connections, okay, yeah, which just goes to show power of community, really, doesn't it? I guess.
Exactly. You know, the only request we put initially was to get the stories, which eventually we just got, you know, worked on one story. So yeah, other than that, you know, I remember reaching out and Jenny, do you know anybody?
Know anybody? Yeah.
Do you know anybody? Do you know anybody? So that's what was frantically, because our shoot dates were locked, our location was locked. Later on, we changed the location, of course, but you know, at that time we had all the deadlines, and you know, we didn't have people. So I was frantically reaching out to people. I even reached out to Elliot, and you know, I'm looking for photographers. Can somebody tell? I'm looking for a sound guy. So there were a lot of back and forth mails, all to the people. So yeah, you know, I think this is how you know, industry does work a lot of times. I've heard from other people say, you know, someone who knows someone who knows someone. So that is why the power of connection is very important.
That's great. And Morgan and everybody else, you know, feel free to use this community and others to tap people up to see if there are, you know, people that you would be interested in collaborating with. I think it's just a kind of, it's a good window of opportunity. And as you say, Swati, it's that sort of word of mouth worthy that perhaps you don't get when you just find somebody on Fiverr or wherever else people look for people.
Yeah.
So that's a bad thing. That can be useful, of course, but
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you were asking for plans for next year, right? I was thinking I'm really keen to collaborate with Greg. So, and you know, we've had a couple of discussions. So let's.
Oh, for sure. Sorry, I've got is my microphone working, by the way? I've literally had it muted.
Loud and clear.
I'd love to. In fact, the other day I was, you know, this idea I told you about, Swati, it's kind of good in some ways. I mean, I've been so busy this last thing. I was just telling Elliot about something the last 3 days, this marathon writing session, recording session for a pitch. But it's almost like then I get a moment, and I think I said something yesterday to Emily in the studio. We were doing, I said a joke about something. She said about being in the music business, or something about when being in the music business. I said, what do you mean being in the music business? No one's in the music business. We're just scavengers on the outside waiting for a moment. You know, and it's kind of, she laughed at this comment, and I thought, you know, I'm going to use that in my script for that film I was talking about the musician, because it's quite a funny dialogue, you know, because truly, apart from maybe the business people, the people that have gone straight into the, you know, the actual record companies and so on, most of the creatives on the outside are just having a moment when they can, you know, they're scavenging on the outside, and a lot of them are not really, you know, earning money. I mean, the shocking number of people in this country that earn above the basic threshold for income. A friend of mine who works for the Musicians Union is quite senior. He did the numbers on it. We did a talk at the Emirates, whatever the expo once there, and he did a panel, and I was on the panel, and he started off by saying it's less than 2,000 people. It's just shocking for creatives, you know, in earning out of music under that threshold. So, you know, or above that threshold, yeah. So it's a very small amount. So, but you know, these little lines, you know, when you let something sit for a bit longer, I'm thinking about this story a bit more that we could possibly work on. So yeah, but yeah, I definitely want to get that in some sort of form, and get it over to you and see what you think.
Yeah, I think you know, the idea that you told me was quite good, and I think we should get that at least in some form.
Yeah, for sure. Still quite current as well. I did it many years ago, 15 years, but it's still relevant. More so, maybe.
We need to get it out.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask Randall, how are you doing? Because you had a head injury. Jenny showed me a photograph that looked pretty bad.
I'm doing okay, mate. Thanks for asking. Yeah, just taking it easy this week, keeping an eye open for concussion syndrome. But other than that, so far doing well. It's been nice to be off work, actually.
Hey, Randall, I'm going to be in Toronto at George Brown on the 28th of January doing the Saturday Film School. So,
oh, cool.
I'll see you then.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah.
And by the way, Swati, you are so lucky to work with Greg. He's a person with amazing talent and the lateral kind of ideas and pop stuff out that you would never expect. So, and you guys are going to work well together. So well done, both of you. I feel like I'm monitoring a dating service.
You
are the definite person in the background, I think, that plays a gentle hand. It's like one of those old wise men that you see making things happen, but in a very simple way.
Yeah, it's a new rain dance app called Filmer.
Believe it or not, as an aside, when we first dreamt up Collab Writers, we did think about, I had an idea in my head at that time. This is before lots of apps came on board in the world, was to create a Collab Writers creative dating app. So I was going to actually do that at some point, but as per usual, I got too busy and it didn't happen. This was back in 2018, I think. So
good idea. I have vested interests.
Yeah. So it never actually came about, but there's another creative in the background running out.
Going to be coming back in with a couple of pieces of pizza in a minute.
Oh, that's very nice. It's lovely to have waitress service in the studio. Wonderful, wonderful.
I can't eat a whole pizza. It's
So I'm going to ask, seeing as Morgan, you bravely asked a question, I'm going to ask you about your collaborations in the last year, if you want to share what you've worked on or what you're working on, then feel free to use this as your platform. Can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Apologies. I forgot all about that. I was on mute. I'm now off mute.
Okay. We can hear you now.
I'm predominantly an actor, so I do a lot of bits and pieces for like corporate shoots, commercials, a bit of extra work. I have been writing a play recently in collaboration with Soho Theatre and Synergy Theatre Group as well. So we had some R&D for it last month. So we had some actors in and we workshopped the first couple of drafts of it. So that went well. Hopefully I can get the second and third lots of the next draft done. So that'll be probably 6 drafts. The 6th draft of it done, and then we'll see where we go from there, whether or not they want to take it on or not. So that would be good. And then there's a short film that I've always wanted to do. So I've done my first one during lockdown over in 2020, and that was terrible. Everything possible went wrong. Sound was terrible. The look of it actually was the best thing. The actors were fine. It's just probably the first time doing it, everything just went to pot. But it kind of inspired me to want to do it again. So there's a nice idea about someone doing something on a running track and the voices in his head kind of bearing down on him a little bit. So I kind of like the idea of doing that when it's a lot warmer, because it's going to be probably me acting and running, and I don't want to do it in -2.
No, definitely not. Good idea. Not in the next few weeks then.
I'm going to wait until New Year for that one. And the final one is, it's been a long time just gestating and thinking about it. So once I've done the play, because I've already written the short film, so once I've done the play, I'll work on either a TV show or a film. And I like murder mysteries. I've always been a big fan of like the Murder on the Orient Express, and obviously we've got Glass Onion or Knives Out as well that has just come out. And I've always liked the idea of murders set in places that you don't normally see. So I had this idea for a murder set in a prison, and I just thought, I can see where it can go, but I just need to kind of play it out. So that's the 3 things I've been working on all this year, writing wise anyway.
Yeah. Are you looking for a collaborator for the one that's set in a prison?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it'd be great to try and get some, like, any input or any collaboration in terms of practicality of how we're going to pitch it to whoever, whether it be Netflix or Amazon, whoever. And also probably now that I've thought about it, because it's quite extensive in terms of the characters that are involved, because you've got the characters who are set in the prison, and you could go into a lot more detail about who those red herrings and who those suspects are. And then you can go into a lot more detail about the people who are investigating it, because it's police. So I figured out that whenever there's a murder in a prison or a death in a prison, there's a group or an organization that investigate first, and then they bring in the police to then, if they feel it's a murder, the police come involved. But if it's just like a possible suicide, it's dealt with within the prison service. So it's just an interesting look at a murder mystery that not many people probably would have seen, be aware of. And I just think it's just an interesting place to set it. So yes, any collaborations, any ideas?
Yeah, no, it does sound interesting. I'm going to put our email in the chat. So I was in touch with somebody the other day who's a member of Collab Writers, who was looking for somebody to write with. And they want to do something that's crime focused. So if you are interested, then drop me a line and I could, possibly hook you up with that person if you're interested, but no pressure.
Well, yeah, I mean, what I want to do, because the play is, because they're waiting for a draft, I need to get that play done. So The Icon and the Stand-In is a play that needs to get done ASAP, because hopefully Soho Theatre would want to pick it up, or at least consider picking it up for the spring. That would be exciting, because that's got a little bit more traction on it. Sure. So then once I've done the draft, hopefully I'll have it done by, I want to say end of December. I can start thinking more about the murder mystery, because I'm waiting for them to give me notes and what changes we can do, if we can do another workshop with another set of actors. Because that one's got that's more traction, if you know what I mean. There's more wheels that are moving in a direction of getting it produced. Whereas this is more of an idea. So there's like 10 or 15 scenes that I know where it's going. I know the ending. I know how it starts. I know at the beginning. I just need the details. And I also need to know if it's got enough legs to be a TV show, or is it just a standalone film. But again, we're just playing.
Sounds very interesting, and well done for being so productive.
Morgan, Morgan, you need a showrunner for the TV show, a showrunner. They're really hard to find, but that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard about it because I've read a lot of books on showrunners. There's a great book actually, I can tell you what it was. And he did Snowfall, which is one of my favorite TV shows that I've seen. So he's done lots of showrunning. He did, he's done quite a few, but a showrunner, you're right, would be fantastic, because they can give me an idea. Dan Attis, Directing Great Television was the book that I listened to, and Dan Attias, Attias, is a genius. He worked on, as I say, Snowfall. He's worked since the 1980s, just jumping in and doing directing for television, and he's worked with showrunners, been a showrunner himself, and he just goes into details of how, yes, stressful it is to direct TV. So that's why I'm kind of like, I'm ready just to start directing and getting into writers' rooms and doing all that lovely stuff. But reading that book, it made me realize that, especially in this day and age, you can get more funding if you do television, or you're more likely to get funding if you do television shows rather than just doing films. But yeah, showrunner would be good. If anyone knows a good showrunner.
Yeah, but what you need to do is find someone who's been assistant to a showrunner, and as they move up the ladder, you see, you start at the bottom, work up like everything else.
True.
But I like the way you sound, Morgan. I put my email and contact details in the chat box. Feel free to reach out anytime.
No worries. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll make a note of it now.
And Swati, good to see you again.
Good to see you too, Elliot. And congratulations for Biffa. It was wonderful seeing all this. You look great on that stage out there. And
oh my God, that's so boring. There was I need to leave in a sec too, Jenny and Greg. But 10, 11 years ago, a woman came from Iran, it was a refugee, to London. She took our courses at Raindance, moved to Scotland, and she made a feature film in Iran, in Farsi, but it was funded by Screen Scotland, so it's a British film. And she won the best film at Raindance. She was selected from all the British films in 2022 as the representative for Britain for the Oscars. It doesn't mean she's going to get in, but it means every country submits a film, but at least she's on that list.
Cool.
And then Sunday night at the British Independent Film Forum, she won the Raindance Discovery Award and the Best Breakthrough Director. And she came up on stage, bawling her eyes out and saying, "This means I belong."
No.
It was really emotional.
Yeah.
And she gave Raindance a name check, of course, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, and then I was reading this morning on CNN of all things, no, Washington Post of all things, about a screenwriter, 66 years old, who this year had his first screenplay published that he wrote when he was 20 years old.
No. Wow.
So persistence. Yeah.
It just goes to show as well that those screenplays, I know I have a lot of stories that are still handwritten here. So they're kind of in the drawer, so to speak, collecting dust, but I know that they will come out at some point. So it's always good to hear. It's always good to hear those stories. But congratulations, Elliot, for Raindance as well this year, because I know that was a great success.
It's a great team and it's a great thing, and it's people like you that support and everything. It's not me at all. I had a bit of an idea a long time ago, and goddamn it, it's like sticking a match on some old newspapers, and for some goddamn reason it took flame and burnt.
You're just too humble.
You see the
everything you do.
you guys see the flames. I just see the smoke. Anyway, I'm going to have to leave you guys.
I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, between that and Greg's line earlier, we've had a couple of talkers tonight.
Well, someone said to me, he said, "What's it like 30 years?" And I said, "Every year's different, and every different is difficult." Which is true, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
You're Greg. Nice to see you. And you too, Morgan, and Manish and Swati and Jenny, of course. But I need to leave. I need to go to another class I'm monitoring right now.
Okay. Thank you for joining, Elliot.
Bye.
Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye.
So Manish, I don't know if you are around, whether you want to say anything. I know we've done quite a lot before. There you are.
Yeah, sorry, I was like outside, so I joined a bit late.
No worries.
Yeah, we're coming towards end, I guess. No, nothing much. I'm sure you must have had a great session. I've joined these ones before. It's always great to see you guys joining up and collaborating. That's really good. Yeah, and I've been working on a few projects. We released a film this year, and so yeah, I mean, it's going okay, I guess.
Yeah, Manish, you've been doing a lot of work. I've been seeing your social.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to check some of the latest stuff out, I might just post a link where we keep posting our work on YouTube, because we just released a feature film, and now what we're doing is we're just kind of releasing some of the songs which were in the film, so not the full film, but songs inside the film, just to promote a bit. I'm struggling to get proper distribution though. If somebody is good in that, it would be good to know. I'm trying some film aggregators and stuff, but this distribution is a different ball game for me still. Yeah,
distribution is always difficult. And it took me more than around a year and a half to get distribution for one of my short films.
Yes, yeah, and there is. So I was trying Film Hub. So the film I've submitted to Film Hub, and in India there was Swati. I think you used Film Era, right? I think how were they? They were okay for you as a distributor in India for your film.
Yeah,
Film Era or something.
Yeah, I reached out to Film Era. So it took a long time. That's what I told you. I had shared my film last year. It was a year. In between, there were some changes also. OTT rules changed in India, and then around 6 months, it was just stuck with Disney. Plus, they were not releasing any short films. So
sure. Yeah, I mean, Amazon changed their rules as well. Yeah. Amazon is only doing keyboard. Yeah.
And finally, it got released in October.
Yeah, now I saw that. Congratulations, you got the release there as well. So did you just submit to Filmera, or did you have to do anything else for that?
No.
In terms of the,
so they were the ones, they were communicating with Hotstar.
Fair enough.
Yeah, they were the links. In between, I just had a couple of calls with the Hotstar team and the Disney. Also, it was about some technical issues with the team. The requirements are a lot, So,
fair enough. Yeah, so I mean, this is where.
So it was a long process, but
No, I understand. Same, yeah. I mean, same as Film Hub. I think with the independent cinema, one thing probably I'm thinking to start, and I'll see how much time I have. So one of the thinking I have is how can we make independent, if you know what I mean there. That's one of the theme I want to work with some of the fellow kind of collaborators, because we talk independent cinema, but actually is it actually independent? Probably not. So that's
still on that entire infrastructure and that entire.
It's just because it is independent, but the independent cinema is very.
They just shared Wooler link. So Reynolds and Wooler have a joint, they have a collab or something where you can go directly to Wooler and list your film there. I don't know if you've tried, and you get distributors across the world who do visit Wooler, and there are a lot of deals that happen on Wooler on a continuous basis.
If you can share some whatever is it website or their
link is there in the chat.
Okay.
You can just say,
fair enough. Okay.
Let's share this link.
Fair enough. Okay. I will. Right. Great. Sorry, I've taken lots of time here, guys. Sorry.
No, you haven't at all. I was actually just thinking, Manish, if you wanted to write a sort of thought piece or an article or something, then I'd be happy to put it on the Collab Writers newsletter about whether or not independent is really independent.
I think more than article, if you are willing, or you or anybody, I wanted to do like more of a live stream, and we discussed this through almost, and then out of it can come out of an article as well, of course. So that's something openly discussing and putting on our own social platforms. It could be your YouTube channel, our YouTube channel, or whoever wants a copy of it. But almost discussing it, because as I'm saying, the people I'm going to work with, we will create some supporting content to raise awareness about, are we actually independent? Probably not, because we don't have the supporting infrastructure. It's just a name, right? Just to satisfy people. Oh, you're independent cinema, but then we're not getting to the mainstream because the support system is not there enough. Yes, we research and we do so many things, but it's not a straightforward way. Time passes by.
Yeah, it's interesting. Drop us an email anyway. If
you sure.
Do that.
Definitely.
Well done for all you've done this year as well.
No, thank you, and congratulations to all of you. I mean, I'm sure you guys are doing really, really well as well.
Thank you. I can see that Nina's just joined. Nina, are you there? I think maybe she's got problems with connecting.
I think she was in an event, and
yes, I think so. Yeah. So, Greg, you want to tell us about your successes, your creative musical successes this year? Can't hear you.
Yes, mute, I guess.
I wouldn't exactly use the word successes on how I measure it, but success in the sense of creativity and achievements with developing the art and the art of video making as well. Lots to do as far as getting the awareness, though, as you know. So yeah, I've just been releasing cover versions of 90s dance music and slowing them down and making them more jazzy and soulful so that they're completely different. But the byproduct of this has been getting back to something that I've always loved, hence why I'm here, is making videos and filming and editing, and almost by accident, because the first release, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Maybe just do nothing and a lyric video, and we just got the phone out and started filming in a studio where it's got a nice piano and so on. And I had this idea, and it completely, I kind of relate to you, Morgan, to some extent. You know, you go in with these ideas, and sometimes you just don't know how it's going to pan out. And at least one thing with this is, because the sound was going on after, because it's just a music video, it's like the hardest thing, I think, is getting sound right. I've heard that so many times. And of course, that's probably the next challenge for me. I'm still in my mind, and I've worked with sound for 30 years. I'm a record producer, so I should understand sound, but I know that getting that right for film is a lot harder than, recording music in a studio. It's all controlled. You got a nice microphone. And I think I'm discovering more so that people are having to go in and dub. I'm just looking at so many films now, noticing the dubbing afterwards. And that's a whole new world for me. I'd love to know exactly how the hell they synchronize up, the voices. There must be an easier way of doing it, but yeah. So I've, managed to salvage that first one because I got a bit creative with the editing and so on, and so it looks fine. And then I started to do some more ambitious videos. Jenny knows very well. She helped me do one in the garden where there was 4 of me. I cloned myself 4 times playing different instruments. And then I did a third one. Again, all these are very much like guerrilla style. Just turn up somewhere, try and find a location, take the phone out and start filming, and then try and make it look good in DaVinci Resolve. And I've learned a hell of a lot about editing in DaVinci, which is surprisingly similar to music editing in a strange way, in music production. And then started doing some lyric videos for some of them, and that, as a byproduct, both of these things actually, as a byproduct, got me some actual paid work. One, to make a full-blown music video, but on a much more professional standard because there was budget. So I used 4K cameras and lighting, and we had a dolly and had the whole works, and edited and graded, and then a lyric video recently that I got paid for the first time, which was an interesting one. It's coming out this Christmas, and it's a guy who clearly has a load of money because he he's engaged a bunch of people to Guy Chambers to produce, for one. Now, if anybody knows anything about music production, they know he's one of the biggest sort of record producers. And he got 60 of the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. So the song has a massive orchestra on it as well. Obviously, it was recorded at a very expensive studio, probably Air or something. And then he's engaged a team of people to work on it, to do creative directing. My friend who got me in on it to do I guess the record label management of it. And I got asked to do the lyric video. And talk about imposter syndrome. I mean, Jenny knows this because we were in France, and suddenly I get this call from the creative director, and I'm thinking, oh my God, he's going to start asking for graphics and shit like this, all this really complicated stuff. And I don't know a lot about that. But then he said he'd seen one of my videos on the YouTube channel and he really liked this idea. And I thought, okay, thank God he's actually seen something and he's not just taking my friend's word for it. Because you feel a little less of an imposter if he's actually seen my videos. So as there was a bit of budget, I started getting into the stock footage thing because they wanted a Christmas tree and they wanted various things. And I delivered it. It was quite an ambitious one. I did the clever thing again with the old TV screen, like an old-fashioned TV, and I went through the screen. I had a green screen on it, and I went through, and this projected into the world of this Christmas world. And it's a quirky song. It's called "Thank Fuck It's Christmas." It will never get played on radio, apart from the clean version. But at the end, is
it there on your YouTube channel?
I don't know if it's out yet. I've got to ask Graham. I'm going to talk to him tomorrow, so I've got to ask if it's actually up. I mean, it must be up soon. If it is, I'll send the link. I'll share it. But it got very interesting because I did all of this, and I made it look like the TV, the room we saw was really a bit dull and sad because it's quite a sad song. It's about how life's not really been good for this guy for the last year, and thank fuck it's Christmas kind of thing. So I made the Christmas world the colorful world, and it was all lovely. And the TV that we went in and then we came out at the end was the more dull sort of sad side. And then he got this idea, they got this idea, they said, we love it, we accept, but we've got this idea of going like Tarantino for some reason, like just red, black and white. Everything must be red, black and white. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is complete opposite of what I've been doing. And so I had to go and regrade every single thing. And I was only allowed to use red, blacks and whites and a couple of colors that they had on their logo. And it ain't the easiest thing. He sent me back this thing and he just blasted everything with a red filter. It looked awful. And so I'm working. I said, well, I've obviously going to charge more for this, and it's going to take some time to do it carefully. But I think all these things have been brilliant for me.
It looks really gory. It's like a straight horror movie.
It looks a bit sinister with everything being red, but it gave it a stylized look, and I really liked it in the end. They accepted it, and that was great. But for me, what I love is, I'm learning on the job with Da Vinci. I'm just learning more, so I'm just charging them, of course, respectful hours for what it should take. The fact that it's taken me, for every 1 hour, maybe 3 hours of research to try and work out how to do some complex things. But it's almost like these things are being thrown my way to get because I've become quite comfortable now with a lot of the things you have to do in Da Vinci. And it's all just sort of setting you up for maybe when we do our film, it's these kind of things that it just gives you an insight. I had to do a bit more green screen stuff. I had to do a bit more. I got much better at the actual tracking stuff to move objects and to get them locked into position and so on. So, it's all these little things that if you're thinking about making a film, when just the fact you can do it, you go out and you think, right, damn it, that we didn't quite get that right, but you can mask off and you can do clever tricks. It's like music production is exactly like that. You don't get the ideal. A singer doesn't sometimes come in and give you everything you want, and you have to camouflage things, or you have to do tricks to try and make things work, and you don't always record things or get the best recordings, and you have to find ways to bring the best out and stuff. And I find that filmmaking is exactly the same. Unless you're lucky enough to literally be able to write a check and have the best of everybody and the best setup for everything. But I don't think anybody here, independent filmmaker, is working in the most perfect settings or circumstances. So it forces you to be creative, right? It makes you do things differently to adapt, which is kind of what I love, really. I love that it forces you to think, right, I can't have all of this, so how am I going to make this still look really cool? But Morgan, I think the one thing, the sound is that's a really tricky one. That's even for me now, after this many years being involved in recording sound, I'm not massively confident about the idea of walking out and saying, I'm going to do a film about capturing that sound correctly. I think that's why people would just, they just replace so much stuff afterwards. I don't know what problems you had, but
Sorry, I was just about to say, just giving you an idea of my issues. It was a one-take short film, and the issue was I didn't have somebody who knew the levels of the sound equipment. Simple as that. So when you record it, you're listening on the headphones, it sounds fine. It sounds like you're recording it. But then when you look at it on screen, you realize how loud everything is or how low it is at certain times. So the problems is, I think, moving on forward, is you have to have someone who specifically knows, either has their own kit or knows how to record and capture the sound. Because even if, like you say, 90% of productions, they replace the sound anyway, or they replace and they do the dub. But the sound is a weird thing, because the pictures might not be right, but you can cut around it, or you can go to a different take. But if you capture that sound and it's just not right, it's either too loud or too low. It's like a lot of Christopher Nolan films. People are always complaining like they can't hear what the characters are saying. It really takes you out of the scene and the film if the sound isn't on point. So my advice to anybody, I know it's difficult when you're thinking to yourself, all right, we'll just get the lighting, we'll get someone to do camera work, and we'll just get anyone to do the sound. I'm telling you now, if I could go back in time, I would find an extra 50 or 100 quid and make sure I had someone who knew what they were doing with the sound equipment just to capture it, because sometimes you just don't have the time to edit it correctly to then do the dub, and the actors go away and you can't bring them back in to do any dubbing. So it's like, well, you're kind of stuck with that sound. So 100% get someone with their own equipment and who knows the levels to get the sound.
Yeah, and it's interesting you saying that about Christopher Nolan because what was that last film he did? Tenet, wasn't it, or
Yep.
something?
Tenet.
Couldn't understand what the hell they were saying all the way through, and I thought it was me. I mean, I've got quite a good sound system for watching films in the cabin here, and I thought, what is it? You know, and there's a few films like that, and I'm glad you say that because part it's the Emperor's New Clothes, right? You think, well, it must be me, it must be my setup. He would never get that wrong. How could a massive movie like that get the sound wrong? But they so often do. You know, the sound effects are blasting out, and the dialogue is too quiet. And it shows at that level, if they are still not quite getting it right, how hard it is to achieve this perfect balance. You can see why some of these movies do get awards for sound, because it's such a tricky thing to, you know, to get all. I don't know. I just don't really know how they possibly do it, because as you know, when you edit between things as well, if you're trying to use
it won't work. It just won't work because, for example, if me and you are talking and it's slightly out of sync, it just looks weird. It looks like that I'm talking like an old Chinese. It's because it's just weird, and it takes you out of the scene. Probably the best use of sound consistently, because Nolan's great storyteller, but because even with The Dark Knight Rises, with Bane, the first 10 minutes, it's muffled what he's saying. It's like, I want to hear what he's saying. You're kind of straining yourself to listen. But the best director, and I'd love to just pick his brain and figure out how he does it, is Denis Villeneuve, I think his name is, who's doing Dune. He did Prisoners. He did quite a lot of films. But his sound design on it is fantastic because it's consistently bringing you into the story. It doesn't jar you. It doesn't make you feel like what's going on here. And sometimes a lot of his films don't even have a score where you think there'd be a score. It's mainly a percussion of a beat of something like a car rev, or with Dune, it was the sand swirling around. It's the attention to detail that not many people would do, because they're thinking about the visuals. They're thinking about, how does this look on screen? How can I capture the best thing? And then obviously the actors. But it's also a good attention to the sound and being aware of, if the sound's off even by a little bit, it just takes you emotionally out of the scene. It just takes a while to get it back. You're just disconnected from the whole thing.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Sound. And you've seen some really big budget movies just mess up sound like anything. You know, especially the dialogue and the music. You just can't hear the dialogues. You know, they're just so. I don't know why they do this, but you know, this is something a lot of people are careless about it. You know, they're not thinking, you know, if the music is good, they have to keep it at a very high decibel, and they're just ignoring the dialogues. It's unbelievable how such big movies can mess up. It's unbelievable.
Maybe they need a sound whisperer. Maybe you need to become a sound whisperer, Greg, or something like that. I don't know.
One of the things, though, being a record producer, if you I mean, I'm a singer as well, so I've been the artist on the other side. An interesting thing is when you take on different roles and you're playing some instruments and you're writing all the different roles. I think that is one of the keys to being good at something, is because you'll get this all the time in a studio. You know, you'll get the drummer would come in and say, put the drums up. If you let everybody have a say, the guitar says, put the guitar up. But you know, so somebody has to sit there, the mix engineer, the producer, sit there and say, right, where does everything take its place? And I've always prioritized the vocal, and I'll always argue that point, that most people want to hear a clear vocal. They want to hear the lyric, and they don't want it dipped in the mix with something much louder. And over the years, it does teach you about balancing all the elements. And I think film, that's why I think the transferable skills into filmmaking, I'm finding so many similarities, that you're really trying to, like you say, Morgan, trying to put, where's the focus supposed to be at this point? And sometimes if someone, I don't know, they don't really care about actors so much, like someone like George Lucas, or they don't care about, you know, maybe the script or the dialogue, but they're really into the sound effects and the, you know, the special effects or whatever it is. They will, you know, you see that with record producers. Sometimes they put the drums and the track up way higher than a vocal, because they're not really that into vocals. You know, they like all the sounds that they've produced. And you think you've got to almost be a singer for a while. Maybe that's why maybe good directors who have been actors or can be actors, you know, they know what it's like to be on the other side, make good directors. and writers make good directors and vice versa. I think when you have a hand in everything, you start to see, hey, I shouldn't be biased just one thing here. I have a job to, you know, balance everything up, whatever that is. Where's the story? Where's the focus going to be? Where is sound? Some movies they choose purposely no music whatsoever up to a certain point, possibly. And there's one great one, Morgan, you should check out, which is, I did a little bit for an article for Collab because I was so passionate about this. It's called, you know, it's Castaway with Tom Hanks.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
And if you get the DVD version, and if you know, you'll pick it up cheap now, and look at the director's cut, they've got the sound designer on there doing one of the cuts, so you can you can watch the film all the way through with the sound designer talking.
Ooh.
It's like a masterclass sound, because it was Robert Zemeckis directed this, and his brief was, well, one, they had to dub everything, so that to replace everything on the island when he, you know, he's basically shipwrecked on the island or whatever, because they didn't want to have birds, they didn't want to have sounds in the back that would make it more kind of friendly and cozy. They really wanted to create this, like, he's on his own. And they also said, we don't want music up to that point. There's going to be no music until he leaves the island. So the only time you ever hear the music, it comes in when he finally gets over that final wave, and then the music comes in. Now you've been in the film for quite a long time at that point. So the sound designer had to create essentially a score, emotional score, using just the sound effects of the waves, and the wind would take on different intensity depending on how tense the scene was, for example. So it was all this clever stuff going on, and then the music took its place when it needed to take its place, and it was just a masterclass in film directing, I reckon.
I mean, I'm glad you told me, because I never knew. I've seen that film at least 5 times. I never knew that was the case, honest to God. So it's interesting that you're saying that, because now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, do I hear any music? And I'm not saying that I don't believe you. It's just a case of I've never noticed, but I feel it when I'm seeing the scene where he slowly, like, he takes out his tooth. He tries to kill himself, but you don't know why, what happened before, because it's just like string on a rope. So he refers to it, but he doesn't talk about it. And then obviously he has Wilson there, and obviously he creates fire. So all these kind of struggles he's going through. At no point do I think to myself, oh, the music's not there, so it doesn't add anything towards his struggle. It's just, but this is the thing, like you say, Greg, it's probably a conversation that was needed to have, that they have this appreciation of, okay, this is what we're doing because of this effect that we want to bring to the audience. And I think that is something that needs to be aware of if you're conscious of it. And I'm not saying that Christopher Nolan or various other filmmakers aren't conscious of it. I think it's kind of like what you were saying before, that they favor the big explosions or the big massive score from Hans Zimmer, or this massive visuals, that all of a sudden it's a case of, oh, the sound of what the characters are saying is quite low, can we just turn it up? And maybe when they turn it up, it doesn't compete with what's going on. I'm not sure what's going on, but I think it comes down to an awareness and appreciation of the sound that goes into making these films something special. There's one other thing, talking about sound, I'll just say this. In The Godfather, they've mentioned it before, but I remember when Michael's about to shoot the guy in the restaurant and he's deliberating whether or not he should shoot him at the restaurant table, there's no score, there's no music. It's just the high-pitched train that's screeching to a halt. It's just screeching, and you just this close-up going onto his face. And he deliberately didn't want to score. And the guy who was doing the music score was like, "What? This is a dramatic moment. What do you mean you don't want no score?" He says, "No, I want people just to live with Michael and the decision of whether or not he's going to do it." But the guy was like, "But I need to heighten this in a different way." And it's kind of like trying to figure out the best way to do it. And again, I look at it and think, that's amazing. That's a brilliant piece of work of how you did that. But now I'm looking at it thinking, would it have been better if we didn't have this score in there? I don't know. But these are the choices that I think you need to be aware of, that you need to make, and it needs to make sense.
It's good to be mindful of these things as well.
Yes.
As a filmmaker, it's sort of bringing your attention to a detail that maybe wouldn't have been considered. And sounds, I mean, I you know, Jen knows, I mean, I did this article, I think it might still be up there, but it was called The Arts Collide. And I was basically trying to argue the case that there's no bigger or more creative medium than film. And I can really argue that point because, you know, we have music, we have, you know, acting, we have, you know, all these different arts, but they all come together. And if they come together at the right point, I call it the arts collide. If you get it right, there's nothing more emotional or more impactful than that moment. But I have to say, I did lean towards the music because obviously that's what I do. I did tilt towards getting the music right. And if you're going to use it, getting it right. And more that it is it's the one universal language we've got there. It's the one thing that, you know, if a movie's in another language and you're reading a script or anything else like that, you don't need to translate the music. We all get the emotion from music, right? It's one of those universal things. We know when a chord is, or a music is wanting us to be more, I don't know, melancholy or reflective or emotional, and we know when it wants us to be more energized and you know, like invigorated or whatever. It doesn't matter what country or what language or what culture or music you're into, we kind of all understand that. So I was leaning a little bit towards it, but I think sometimes you can see that detail could be missed possibly, and about how even the background sound like, I don't know what's happening in that restaurant, but I've got a feeling that the clunking of cutlery and things like that probably got a little bit more intense at that point.
No, nothing. So if you see The Godfather, and you'll see it, he comes out of the bathroom once he gets the gun, and he sits back down, and the officer and the other guy who's tried to kill Michael's dad are just eating, and it kind of, you don't hear anything else. All you hear is this train getting louder and louder and louder, and the focus is on Michael's face as his eyes are just darting around thinking, am I going to do it? And then he gets up, shoots the guy, and walks out. Yeah. But the problem is I agree with you that I think film is one of the best mediums for bringing all these fantastic things together, like music and writers and directors and lighting and sound, and so many technicians to create this one image or several moving images to create something truly profound. But what I'm finding is some things with films nowadays is sometimes they're too overscored. You get to a point where they're kind of tip in their hat about, this is the bad guy, here's the musical score for the bad guy, here's the good guy, here's the musical score for the good guy. And again, I'm just mentioning another film, No Country for Old Men. One of the few times, I think I need to watch it again because I haven't seen it since he told me it, but I was watching like a making of, or what the F happened to No Country for Old Men, and there's no score in that film. There's no music.
Yeah, see, it doesn't surprise me, but the thing is, I mean, you're absolutely right. I completely agree. The scoring is awful in some things to me, in the sense it is just constant, and it's like same as visual effects in movies. You see, when they, you know, when they made, let's say the first Jurassic Park movie came out. Okay, I mean that was probably way before, you know, your time, but you know, I was old enough to remember the impact of seeing those damn dinosaurs coming on the screen for the first time, and you know, you waited a long time before you saw it, you know, and when you did, it was like impactful. It was just wow. And then they thought, of course, well, we've got to give more dinosaurs, and they've just subsequently done it. So within the first minute, you're seeing the T-Rex, which was the big build up then. But I've always had this argument, same as George Lucas decided to rework Star Wars and put even more stuff on the screen. That it's same as being a record producer. It takes a lot of, I think, maturity and experience to realize that, you know, the old cliche, less is more, that, you know, people can only take on a certain amount of information. And we're in this world where, of course, there's gaming and there's a lot of stimulus upon people, but I still think human beings are wired up in a certain way. And if you give them anything, if I give, you know, everybody stereo sound and full on this right from bar one to the end, and no light and shade, you see, I mean, it's even a known thing about the way the brain works. The stereo field, the way we work with sound, they just get, you know, used to it. Your brain levels out. So if you're hitting them with visual effects or scoring all the time, they just level out. The emotional level is like a self-leveling compound. It just sits at a certain point. So, you know, it's like anything, isn't it? Out of the darkness, when you shine a torch, you see the light, right? If you constantly blast it all the time, your eyes adjust and it doesn't have the impact. So, you know, I'm completely with you on that. Even though I love music, I think it's really got to be carefully chosen. And that's why when in Castaway when they've dropped that music, and it was a beautiful score. It was one of the best, one of my favorite composers. It just hit you so much more because you hadn't been, your ears hadn't been stimulated with anything like that up to that point. And then it was like, oh my God, people probably didn't realize that they'd not been hearing a score up to that point. But there's another good one in Bullet with Steve.
Another great one.
Yeah, when you've got a score, you've got the typical 70s score when he's being pursued by the guys in the back in the car behind, and he's in the classic Mustang, the green, Mustang, and then when it all kicks off and the chase starts, they stop the music.
Yeah, it's just the car revs and
the director said that the V8 engine is all I need. That's the score. It's completely right.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, great chatting. Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Did you come on before? Have you been on here? I didn't.
No. This is the first time. So I think I'm trying to do a lot more networking events, just go on networking. But this year's been a bit difficult because I've been working so much on different acting projects. So this year, obviously this month, because there's not much going on because we're winding down to Christmas, I saw this on Eventbrite and I was like, we need to do it. So at the moment, in between doing this, I'm kind of doing I'm revising the business plan. So the business plan is for everything. So redefining the mission statement, redefining everything that I want to do moving forward for the new year. Because now I'm thinking to myself, okay, we've got a good opportunity with this play and various other stuff. So it'd be nice to do more networking and speak to more people. So this is the first time doing this, and it's been great. We could do it for quite a while, chatting away. So do you do these types of things? Is it every month? Is it every week?
Yeah, so what we tend to do usually is we have a guest every month, and we chat to the guest. Usually it's either a filmmaker or a writer, usually, but it could be some other creative, sometimes film festivals as well. And then we usually have a portion of the session at the end where people can chat. And obviously, if people are looking for collaborators, then you can use the chat function as well. And we also send out newsletters. They haven't been as frequent as they used to be because I tend to do them. But if you ever want to give a shout out for something, or again, if you're seeking for collaborators, just drop me an email and I can stick it in one of our newsletters. Or if it's a shout out about anything you're doing as well, we can do that.
I appreciate it. You sent me the message about In Time, the murder thing in Showing Me. Yeah. All right. I haven't watched it on purpose because I don't want to be infiltrated by it. But can you tell me without no spoilers? Does someone die in prison and is someone investigating the murder?
So basically, he's in there for murder. But I think somebody does die, but they don't make much of a fuss about it. But the reason I mention it is that it's pretty much all set in the prison. So whilst you might want to not pollute your mind, it might be a helpful reference point, because I think if you mention murder in a prison, people automatically might be taken to that, even though.
Mine. Okay, so mine sounds different, but I'm glad you told me about it because people have told me to watch it because it's good acting and Sean.
Yeah, it's very good acting. It's a good script. Again, I think it's somebody who understands the prison system and has a good feel for that, rather than, because sometimes you see things and they're not very realistic, whereas it is pretty realistic. And I, from a previous career, have been into prisons, and it does feel quite authentic to me. So I think it definitely is worth seeing it as a reference point, at least.
Yeah, I think I'll do a couple of drafts and then I'll watch it, because I unfortunately.
No, I know what you're saying.
I can't help but steal things from things I watch.
No, it's really hard, isn't it? You can't take it out of your brain once it's in there. That's quite difficult. I know.
You don't want your mind to be polluted.
Say again, sorry?
You don't want your mind to be polluted by what you see.
It's the truth. I mean, there's so many films I can remember watching, and every so often I'll find myself putting dialogue of just a little bit of dialogue from films. I thought, I'll be a good piece of dialogue in here. No, it's from this. Or no. And then after a while, I'm like, Nah, it doesn't work. I gotta get rid of it. I can't put it in. So now I've got to a point where if I'm writing in a specific genre, like Knives Out, Murder on the Orient Express, I've stopped watching I'll stop watching all murder mystery programs when I'm writing it, because it just will pollute my mind. I just can't.
Well, I had a bad case of that where an artist I was working with talked about getting her mind polluted. I was being, she was the artist. I recorded this track, and she sent me this melody line on her phone, and this lyric and melody line, and so I wrote with that, and I put the chorus in, and it's all finished. It's done. It's mixed. There's a lot of work in this production. I'm in the gym, and suddenly I hear this track come on, and it's the freaking song, and I find out that she's just basically copied someone else's chorus completely, line for line, with the lyric, everything. She couldn't explain herself. So I thought, I don't know what's going on there. I mean, a line or a little bit of a influence, I get that. We all do that. But literally the whole chorus, I had to completely rewrite the whole chorus because it's complete copies. So it must have, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to imagine that it could have just gone in there and polluted her mind. And she must have known on some level, but.
Well, it reminds me of that Blurred Lines track that Robin Thicke and Pharrell Williams did of Marvin Gaye, and it took a while, but they had to pay $5 million to Marvin Gaye's estate. But it must be worse for musicians because, so many repetitions and so many beats, so many melodies, so many things that you could say are influenced from so many different people, because as naturally we would be. But then when does it become a case of, okay, this is now going into plagiarism, or this is now going into you're actually copying, and you need to pay some money to the original artists that did it? I don't know where the fine line is, but I think it's incredibly more difficult for music than writing, because I can just say, I'm not going to use that line because I know that line is from that particular film.
It gets pretty bad. I mean, there's a saying, where there's a hit, there's a writ.
That's a good one.
It's predominantly to do with if something makes money, then someone's going to come out and make a claim. Probably that's the most likely thing. There's a story about Rick Astley, never gonna give you up, that whole track. They had to pay a woman 20 grand or 25 grand. This is in the 80s when they did it. So this is a reasonable amount of money, because she claimed that she was on the bus and Rick Astley was sitting in front of her on the bus, and she sang that melody, and Rick Astley ripped her off and took her melody.
Wow.
And it made so much money, rather than the bad publicity and all the rest of it, they thought just pay the woman 20 grand or whatever it is and be done. And and I've heard of, that one with Robin Thicke, that's pretty clear, but I've heard some recently that went to court where I think it was a beat or something someone was trying to claim, and I thought, well, that's getting ridiculous now, because if it's a beat that they're going to try and claim, you've copied that rhythm and pattern. Well, so much music has a similar beat and a pattern and a sound. I mean, you'd be suing everybody for the rest of their lives. It would be impossible to do anything original. So it's depending on the money, I guess, and the lawyers involved. So whereabouts are you based? Are you UK based, I presume?
Yeah, I'm in Reading. So my accent's from Bradford, Yorkshire, for my sins. I spent like 10-15 years in London, so I was mainly acting part-time, and then I decided to do it in 2017 full-time, the acting. But I've always wanted to write, so I've always written like poetry and things like that. But then when lockdown happened, I had a lot more time and a bit of savings to actually just, okay, let's do a short film. And like I say, I loved it and hated it at the same time. It's like watching your favorite pub burn to the ground. It's like, oh, this is amazing. I've done this. This came from an idea to it being on screen, and you get your friends in, you hire the venue, you get everything, you got the lights, you got the cameraman, and it's terrible. And you're like, oh, and it's like,
it's better to, it's I have admiration for anybody doing something, whether it goes wrong or not, it doesn't really matter. For me, it's the admiration of people getting out and doing things. It's that thing, isn't it? I always say to my kids, if anybody's going to stand there and criticize because something went wrong, and say, well, the person that never makes a mistake is the person that never does anything. The point is,
yeah.
So it's all about getting up and doing stuff, whether it goes wrong or not. I have huge respect for people trying, especially filmmaking. Doing something like this, the creative thing. It's it's usually a thing where you've got to speculate, you've got to pull in money from somewhere, you've got to put your time in. It's not like someone's coming along and just throwing money at you and saying, hey, have a crack. Anybody doing something creative has to kind of, do it themselves. So it's an amazing achievement just to have gotten that far, and then you learn from it, and
like it's good experience to say that I've done it, because up until that point it was a case of I want to do it, and then once I've done it, it's kind of like, all right, this is where we need to improve on. And I'll tell you now, there will never ever be a film or a TV production I produce or I'm involved with where the sound is off. It will never ever happen again. So if anything it has come from this short film, it has come from, you do not neglect the sound at all. So that's the only one thing I would say moving forward, because visually I think it looks good. It's just, you just didn't execute all the elements well, and as soon as I heard it, it was like, the sound just takes me out. It doesn't matter what they're saying, it just takes me out. So yeah, the sound will be immeasurably more improved moving forward.
I'm sure it will. It's like they say, once bitten, twice shy. So yeah. Anyhow, well, great to meet you, Morgan. I better get going, I guess, and do some tidings. My kid's 18th birthday. I've got twins, and it's the 18th on Saturday.
Birthday?
And, 18th. Having a party.
And then watching the England game.
Well, I think they've not got. Unfortunately, a few less people are coming to the party because of the football. Yeah, but there's just loads to do. The place is a mess, and I'm actually really bad because I'm locking my studio for one, but I'm locking the big TV in the front room in my studio. And I'm locking anything that's like, delicate, technical, hiding it away. So there's a bit of rigging stuff up, I think.
Well, good luck, mate.
Great to see you, Swati, and we'll definitely be chatting soon.
Definitely. And Greg, my travel visa expires in Feb, so I better come to UK.
Oh yeah.
Well, then, Swati, you've got to come. Definitely.
Two places you can stay. You can either stay in the cabin here if we're working on something, which is self-contained. It's got, you've got everything you need, and it's got a nice big screen with a projector. So if you want to watch films, you've got a good way of seeing them. Or Jennie's, I'm sure. Jennie's already offered, unless I'm offering something you haven't got.
I have offered Greenwich, yeah.
Greenwich is lovely. I don't know where you live, but Greenwich is lovely.
I can stay. I just need to make a project happen. That's it, with you.
Oh, and it's good to know that, Morgan, you might be tapped up for being an actor at some point.
Anytime you need me to do a bit of acting and I'm free, I am more than available and willing. So yeah,
there's actually a part in this film. I was just looking at you for a second. I realized, hang on a second, this film that we're talking about doing, he'd be perfect for one of the parts in it.
I'd take it 100%. Send me the script. Send me the script. I'll pop the email and details in the chat. Send me the script. I'll have a look at it.
Well, I got to get the script together. That's the issue. I mean, I was even thinking.
That's whatever I'm waiting for.
I'm such a visual kind of person. I was almost thinking of just going out and taking, shots of all the scenes where I want it to be, exactly how I want it to be, and then actually putting dialogue over the top of all the lines.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we write the, why don't you just jot the ideas and send it over to me? And if you want, I can put it in a script format. And
it won't be terrible, because I've done these a few times, and I at least can make things clear. Everybody should know, even if it's like, if there's going to be a pedant there, say, you can't write a script like that. That should be in capitals and that. But obviously, it's not going to be as if someone's going to pick it apart. But it will be definitely clear. Everybody should know exactly what's going on and when it's going on and where things are. I'm quite finicky about details, so I would even put in the sort of look of the scene or whatever, and how long it should run and all that stuff. But yeah, we'll start with something, and then you can bring your expertise in. I've no idea how to write proper scripts.
We in this room, we do have a lot of writing experience.
It's getting ideas down, and then I think it's the vision of stuff, and then of course I guess the back end. I'm into the technical side of things. It's like my pressure, Morgan, with sound is I feel like if I got the sound wrong, I should be shot, you know, because
Yeah.
it's such an embarrassment that would be. I mean, I'd want the sound. I'd want the sound to be one of those things that you actually admire, not like, oh well, we couldn't quite get it. So I've even got a guy who a friend of mine who's got Dolby Atmos.
USP of your film has to be sound.
Yeah.
I'm actually, I've got a friend who's now I helped him install Dolby Atmos in his studio. So he's just offered it to me because I helped him out. He said, you know, come and try stuff out. So I'm mixing in Dolby Atmos as well. I can tell you that. I did something in stereo recently for a friend, and I put it in the cabin. I've got good sound, and I thought the sound ain't good enough. It was perfectly fine on my laptop, and it's perfectly fine on here, but it's not good enough in that cabin. So there's no way we're doing a short film, and it's not going to be Dolby Atmos, or at least some proper surround's got to be going on. Probably Dolby Atmos.
You're the guy that I needed on the short film. Someone who was like, no, this ain't good enough. We need to do this. I need somebody on there that's like, no, we need to do this. We need to do that. We need to do this. I'm like, okay. That's what
it's the mixing of it as well after, and that's the thing, because you know, I mean, I wouldn't mix in an editing program, for example. It's got to go into my proper audio thing with all the plugins, because you know that's you know, that's the way. It's like anything, isn't it? You know, you've got to go into the proper thing for doing it. If it's sound and sound mixing, you've got to go into the pro gear for that, not sort of trying to do it in DaVinci Resolve or something. You just can't. So the sound is going to be a labor of love for sure, and the music and the balance. I mean, I do things even now. I mix. I'm in my car listening to my mix. I'm sending it to people, put it on your system. You know, I'm constantly, you know, Jenny knows, I'm obsessing about it, even this many years after working with it. Because if I hear anything off or anything shifted, I kind of go nuts about it, and it's got to be absolutely right. I'm still, as far as I'm concerned, it ain't ever good enough. Although I just did something today and I was pretty pleased with it. I have to say it resolved some real issues I had recently, and I was going to almost redo my whole studio because of it, but actually it worked out fine. So I think sometimes it's just a weird thing. But yeah, if we do something, I don't know, we'll have to find some little Dolby Atmos theater and, I don't know, try it out or something.
Well, why don't we say, so this is the end of 2022, let's get it made by the end of 2023, and then we can talk about it at this session next year.
Yeah, it's got to be made. Oh, bloody hell, next year it better be made. God almighty. Can't do these things.
Jenny, you're talking about end of year. I was talking about Jan.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
She has a visa that's run out.
Get on with it. Mind you, you do realize how cold it is here now.
Don't worry, the heating's brilliant in here. You'll be fine in here.
Most of the
Jenny, by end of next year, we'll have a feature.
Yeah, well, I don't mind going out in the cold. I just it's atmosphere. It's like, you know, steam off the breath and whatever. Free visuals. All right, guys. Well,
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Nice meeting you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Take care, guys. Have a good Christmas. Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Have a nice